Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me all over the place, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, at Hawk Blogger. And this morning, fine Thursday morning here in the PNW, as we welcome in a new guest, a first-time guest, always special, Dalton Wasserman of Pro Football Focus. Man, it is good to have you here. How you doing?
Oh, fantastic. It's been a fun football season so far, covering NFL and college, and it's only getting better each week.
Well, before we get into all the football stuff, which we will definitely get into, for folks that don't know you, Dalton, tell us a little bit about how you got into what you're doing.
Yeah, so I used to coach high school ball. Obviously, during COVID, that all kind of shut down while I was looking for jobs. I had just moved to Chicago, so I started working from home, working remote for PFF, actually on the data side. So I did the grading for 3 years. I worked up with the data team, our data team, for 4 years, and then started getting into writing on the website, and then actually started up on the video side on the college podcast with Max Chadwick. And then last year, they had me start doing both NFL and college, and it's been a blast ever since. So yeah, I mean, just one of those things where I think it's an advantage for me to have worked on the data team, to know what the grading looks like behind the scenes, and then take it over and communicate it. I really feel like that's the biggest part of my job right there.
Well, I know I happen to be someone who references PFF grades. I reference PFS data. I reference all sorts of data. And it's obviously a controversial topic, how these grades come to be. I think I've started to figure out the quarterback stuff and where things happen there, especially for the turnover, whether he plays and big time throws and how much that factors into things. What position do you feel like PFF grades are most stable and reliable that you feel best about, and where maybe is it harder for grading to do well?
I really think, it's been something we've been credited with a lot. I think when you talk about offensive and defensive line play, that's really the biggest difference that we've made, because, with quarterbacks, there's so many different metrics. ESPN has total QBR, and there's all these EPA things and yards per attempt and all that stuff. So it's, everybody's evaluating quarterbacks, but I think in the trenches is where we've really made the biggest difference, right? When it comes to evaluating offensive lines with regard then to team performance and how it, domino effects to everything else. And then defensive lines, it used to just be, okay, the best guys have the most sacks, of course. Well, that's not quite the case, right? When you talk about total pressure and pass rush win rates and the grades that go with that. And then even in run defense, right? There used to not be some sort of quantitative metric for run defense, and our run defense grades, I think, do a great job of that. I think the one thing we are working on, and I think within the next year or two, it's going to get a lot better, is wide receivers and coverage when you talk about away from the ball, and further strengthening our separation metrics and how good wide receivers are, say, in route running when they're away from the ball and they're not targeted, and defensive backs the same way. I really think within the next year or two, we're going to start to revolutionize that, especially when it comes to college scouting and finding out how good wide receivers and defensive backs are away from the ball and not just when they're targeted.
Well, Dalton, just the other day, I was taking my dog Finn for a walk, and I threw on the PFF pod with a couple familiar voices, and this was recapping the win over the Seahawks win over the Cardinals, and I heard this just 52 seconds in.
The Seahawks just kind of keep chugging along because they have an identity, right? They're going to play solid defense. They got the zone run game going a little bit with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and Sam Darnold's playing fantastic football. I'm going to do a film breakdown on him later in the week as well. But
love it.
The Seahawks have an identity. Fantastic. That's why they're winning ball games. That's why they're 3-1. Very close to 4-0. I don't think we're talking enough about how close the Seahawks are to 4-0 because they were about 15 yards from it. The Cardinals, the identity's kind of lost, right?
So, Dalton, does that sound familiar? That voice that you know?
That sounds like a real smart person saying those things. A
Yes.
real, just a real genius there saying those
Handsome,
things.
smart, does it all. So Dalton, honestly, this really caught my attention because we spent a lot of the year last year talking about what the Seahawks identity was. I asked Ryan Grubb in countless press conferences, what's the identity you're going for? And he often would say, well, we're searching for it. And we're 4 games into this season, and I think you could argue the first game was off identity, but since then, the Seahawks have been exactly who they said they would be. Talk about how you came to this conclusion that you feel like they've got an identity, and Arizona is an example of a team that does not.
So I think when you look at Seattle, and I think especially their offense, right, and it's great that you bring up Ryan Grubb, because it's not that Seattle had a terrible offense last year. It was just A, high variance because it was so based on Geno Smith and the vertical passing. You're seeing that a little bit now with the Raiders. And B, because of the offensive line struggles and they couldn't really figure out what to do with it, they had a hard time running the football. There's no question about that. Obviously, some injuries don't help you on that front either. But this is what I was hoping for Seattle's offense when they hired Clint Kubiak. I think more than any player that they acquired, whether it be in free agency or trades or the draft, I think the Clint Kubiak hiring was the best move they made the entire offseason, especially when you pair it with Sam Darnold and the chemistry they had going back to Kubiak being Darnold's quarterbacks coach in 2023 in San Francisco, and the fact that it's essentially, for the most part, the same system Darnold ran last year in Minnesota. And there's a clear identity. They want to run the football. They're the only team in the NFL right now that's running it more than they're throwing it. Some people would ask then, okay, does that mean they're trying to hide Sam Darnold? No, they're just picking the right times to strike. They have the play action game going. They're letting Darnold make throws to his strengths. And actually, he's more decisive than ever because it is the same system he ran last year. He's got his fastest average time to throw ever. And the other bit of their offense that I think is just fantastic, the dominance over the middle of the field. Between the numbers, Sam Darnold is our highest graded passer in the NFL. So there's a clear and concise layered plan to how this offense works. We want the zone run game going. We want to get under center and run play action. And even when we drop back, Sam Darnold has total control of the middle of the field, especially to attack linebackers and safeties. There's more motion in this offense. Smith and Jigba's working all over the place in motion. It's just a great layered approach that Kubiak's brought to this, and it works for Darnold because it's very similar to what he did under Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota.
One of the things that really has changed, a good example of how much of a difference there is offensively, philosophically from last year. Last year, the Seahawks under Ryan Grubb ran 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers, 76% of the time. All right. They ran 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, 16% of the time. This year, that 76%, 11 personnel is down to 31%, and 12 personnel is up to 27%. Not only that, but they're varied. They've run 21 personnel, 17%. They've run 22 personnel, 12%, and they've run 13 personnel, 7%. Last year is basically an 11 and a 12 team. Nothing else was more than 2% of the time. There's some interesting numbers going on around 12 personnel. I'll share those in a second, but how much does it affect a defense when an offense can be that varied in their personnel groupings?
Oh, a ton, because that means the defense has to be more varied in their personnel groupings. And what an offensive coordinator can do is pick out certain matchups that he likes, right? If there are certain teams, that don't like playing against 2 tight ends and a fullback and that sort of thing, and they want to stay in nickel 95% of the game, you're going to get big and run right at them. If there's certain teams that get in base when you get in certain looks and you can throw out of those 2 tight end looks or you can throw out of those 2 back looks, then it gets more versatile. You get matchups with linebackers and interior defenders and things like that. It makes such a big difference because, look, a defensive coordinator's job is stressful enough when it comes to scheme and X's and O's. But when you're trying to constantly match personnel groupings as well, and some teams just don't have the depth to do that, right? Some teams, nickel is their best 11. If they put a third linebacker out there, they're exposing themselves. Some other teams like to get heavy with 5 defensive linemen. Well, against certain alignments, if you spread it out, you can't do that. So it is a whole nother layer for a defensive coordinator to worry about. I think, Seattle's doing a great job of it. I think a team like the Buffalo Bills does it. They do it as good as anybody with just the number of different people, the amount of different productive people they can throw on a football field in 100 different combinations. It stresses out a defensive coordinator a lot.
Well, I saw a great thing from Sumer Sports today. They sent out what happens to be a trend in the league. And 12 personnel, the rate of 12 personnel across the league went from 18.5 in 2022 to 19.2 to 21.9. It's up to 24%. So it's slowly rising. EPA from those sets has been rising as well from 0.12 to 0.17. And red zone EPA has gone from negative 0.5 to positive 0.3 in those years. And the Seahawks right now are the number 1 EPA per play 12 personnel team in the NFL. It's the only personnel package where they are equally running or passing, and they're effective at both. With Robbie Oots, their fullback, out for at least a few more weeks on IR, I think we're going to see a lot more of this 12 personnel. I'm curious, there's folks that look at the Seahawks tight end room with AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo and Eric Saubert, and they're like, not much there. Others see like an up and coming room. Where are you on the Seahawks tight end?
No, absolutely an up-and-coming room. One more stat I want to throw out you is even in our PFF grades, we grade the entire offense as a team. When the Seahawks are in 12 personnel, they are the highest-graded offense in the league as well. So they're getting it done performance-wise, and obviously the efficiency you mentioned. And I think a good point you mentioned there, too, when it comes to 12 personnel is balancing out run and pass, right? Being more unpredictable. When you get in the shotgun with just 3 receivers and 1 H-back back there, you're going to be at least 70% pass, and some teams are more than that, right? It limits your options in the run game when you have those 2 tight ends on the field, whether they're together on one side of the formation, whether they're apart and split, it's a 2-by-2 look, or even if one of them, say Elijah Arroyo, is flexed out, it makes things so hard schematically because now you have bigger personnel, but these guys are athletes too now. The tight ends are coming out of college better than ever, and teams are looking for high-end athleticism like Arroyo has, right? AJ Barner, a little bit more of a tweener coming from Michigan as a blocker. And now I think so far I've seen more out of him as a receiver than I ever did at Michigan because he was playing with Colson Loveland, who also complimented him very well, right? But no, I'm very high on this tight end room right now. And I think the biggest thing is not only do you have 3 pretty talented guys, they're all different players. I think that's a big thing too, is not having 3 of the same exact type player. Barner's more that classic hybrid. Arroyo's a flex guy with speed who can get down the field. Saubert's a savvy veteran who knows what he's doing back there. So I think the fact that they have A, good players, and B, different types of players makes it really hard for teams to figure out what they're doing in 12 on a down-to-down basis.
Yeah, the AJ Barner thing is wild in that most people would never know that he had the second most receiving touchdowns of a rookie tight end in Seahawks franchise history last year. He's had more touchdowns in the NFL as a receiver than he had in his entire college career. So it's been a little bit of a different role that they've asked for him, and he's been rising to that occasion. One of the other aspects of this personnel, and you talked about it a little bit as well, is started noticing, the Seahawks are facing a lot of stacked boxes, highest stacked box rate in the NFL. And initially I thought that was like, people know they want to run it and they're trying to stop it. Well, the Seahawks haven't been running the ball very well. So that's not it. What seems to be happening is week in, week out, people are having to react to these personnel groupings by bringing an extra safety down, by bringing an extra linebacker on the field, whether they want to or not. And the Seahawks have been able to pass against those looks. So do you think that will continue, or do you think the defenses will start actually going neutral or lighter boxes and forcing the Seahawks to prove they can run the ball?
That's dangerous to do if you're going to go to a lighter box. And I wonder if there's going to be times where Kubiak might adjust it to where he spreads out the formation a little just to create lighter boxes for the backs as well. Because I do think the run game is going to get there. We have to remember, especially that interior of the offensive line, it's so young, right? Zabel, the rookie, and he's playing great. Props to Jalen Sundell at center and the way he's been playing because he wasn't even supposed to be starting. Anthony Bradford at right guard too. I mean, I think the run game is a work in progress because the O-line is a work in progress. Now, it's been better than last year. I'll tell you that right now. It has been better than last year, and it's great to see Abraham Lucas healthy. But no, I think as long as – and this is what makes 12 personnel so trendy right now is that as long as you're putting those 7 guys on the line of scrimmage and sometimes even a fullback and you're getting 22 out there on the field, you have to respect that. If you go out there and you're just hat-on-hat, 7-on-7, you're going to have a problem. And it's just a numbers game at that point. It's something the offenses always talk about is we want a hat on the hat. We get even numbers of blockers and defenders. Boy, we got Kenneth Walker, who we know he can break tackles in open space if we get him up on a safety. So, no, I don't think so. I think you have to respect it. And the way that Darnold and Kubiak are responding by getting in those play action looks and the way Darnold is throwing right over those linebackers' heads, it's just ideally what you want as an offense.
Well, there's a smart thing I heard from someone as well on this same podcast. Let me play it for you on the other side of the ball.
You have options, and what they're able to do, especially with Witherspoon back, and then when Emmanwori gets back, is match any offensive person. Even if a team wants to get in 12 and get heavy on them, hey, we're not small. We got this big freaking strong safety. We can move Devin outside like the Chiefs do with Trent McDuffie. Mm-hmm. That flexibility that Mike Macdonald has with their defense, that makes them super dangerous. I'm with you when Emmanwori gets back too and in a groove. This back seven's about to turn into like an amoeba.
Yeah.
So Dalton, wise words once again there, and Nick Emmanwori does look like he's back this week, and Devin Witherspoon is flexible in that way. And We just talked about how the league's going to more 12 personnel. The Seahawks seem to maybe be a step ahead in having personnel on the other side of the ball that can match regardless of that set on the offense.
Absolutely. And I think what I like the most about it is you're seeing, I think it's a model the Kansas City Chiefs have really gone to, depending on, who they want out there on the field. They can throw three linebackers out there, right, with, say, Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill and then Leo Chenal, who's one of the best run defenders in the league. If they want to go nickel and take Chenal out, then they've got even a big safety nickel kind of guy in a Shamari Connor or Jaden Hicks. And then at any time they're in obvious pass, they can move Trent McDuffie all over the place. I think you're starting to see a similar vibe of what Mike Macdonald's trying to do, is kind of what Steve Spagnuolo does in Kansas City. Witherspoon can go inside out. Emmanwori is the type of guy with his size and speed that can play down in the box. Julian Love back there at free safety obviously helps that a lot. But I think also one of the nice developments I've seen lately in these first 4 weeks is, the emergence of, because this we've always talked about Woolen and Witherspoon, right, with Seattle. And those are the corners, and that's it, right? But I think when you look at Darion Kendrick coming out of nowhere to play really well, Josh Jobe coming out of nowhere to play really well, when you have a depth of cornerback like that, like the Kansas City Chiefs have, you're allowed to move Witherspoon inside and outside however you want to. You're allowed to move Witherspoon inside because not only is he a great cover guy, since he was at Illinois and then drafted first round, obviously with you guys, he's a spectacular run defender. He don't care how big he is. I said on the show too, he's got a linebacker soul and a cornerback's body. You got to love that about Witherspoon. And sometimes it sounds like, just a fancy saying, kind of a joking way, but it really matters when it comes to, okay, that's another elite run defender I can put in there, and he's a corner. Not a whole lot of teams have that. So the idea of having that flexibility, and I think they have it on the defensive line too. When you look at, maybe there's not one household name on their D line. Maybe Leonard Williams is the closest thing to it, former Jet great. But I think it's the fact that they can put so many different combinations. They've got run defense combos. They've got pass rush combos with, certain guys maybe aren't as great in run defense, and they can put them out there on late downs. I really think that's what Mike Macdonald is building. He's trying to build personnel-wise a similar thing to what Steve Spagnuolo has in Kansas City.
I didn't prep you for this, so I'm not expecting you to have this available. But does PFF have a way to see grades for a guy like Devin Witherspoon when he's playing nickel versus when he's playing outside?
I do. It may take me about 30 or so seconds to pull it up.
Well, I'll talk over it while you're
Absolutely.
taking a look, because one of the things that's, I think, going to be an increased conversation among Seahawks fans and analysts that are watching this team is where he is best, because I asked Mike Macdonald yesterday, has Darion Kendrick earned the right to compete for the nickel cornerback spot? And he said, short answer is yes. And what the implication there is, Dalton, is if he does show that he's worthy of that spot, Witherspoon would stay outside, whether it's big nickel or little nickel in most cases, and Reek Woolen may not be on the field. It might be Josh Jobe is now ahead of Reek Woolen on the depth chart. Last week against Arizona, when they went big nickel with DeAnthony Bell, Reek Woolen came off the field. Josh Jobe stayed on. So part of the reason I'm asking about the Witherspoon grades is there's some folks that are a little concerned about, like, well, he might be best in the nickel, and are you taking away one of your strengths?
So here's what I have for you. When he's on the outside, this is his career. I'm going all the way back to the start of his career. On the outside, he's got a PFF grade of 82.3. In the slot, he's got a PFF grade of 79.9. Honestly, that 2-point difference, especially over that amount of time, is just about nothing. He's basically equally as effective in either. And honestly, and I get Macdonald has to answer questions like that when he's asked them. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't lock anybody into one specific role. Kendrick with the nickel or Witherspoon inside or outside. I think that flexibility and the fact that Witherspoon, much like, again, Trent McDuffie in Kansas City, the fact that he can do both in any situation, you just want to put your 11 best players out there. Mm-hmm. I think that's the big thing. And yes, Kendrick is played great. He's got a big role all of a sudden in this defense. But the fact that Witherspoon can do that, I don't think you sit there and lock him into one role. And we have the numbers that say he's equally effective in both. And the fact that he has that advantage, and I'll say this, the experience too. And look, going back to Illinois, even they're taught, those defensive backs are taught very well. They got more coming into the league pretty soon. Don't you worry. But he's played over 1,000 snaps in the slot. He's played over 700 snaps on the outside. The experience and the effectiveness with both should make that more flexible. I don't think there's one clear-cut answer because there doesn't have to be.
So I know that your pal, your co-host, Trevor Sikkema, picked the Seahawks to win the division before the season. And I can't remember where you were on the Seahawks. I doubt you picked them to win the division. Most people were not, but maybe I'm wrong. What's been the biggest surprise for you from before the season and what you thought would be the case and what's actually started to unfold for Seattle on both sides of the ball?
I knew that Darnold and Kubiak were a good match because they've worked together before. And again, it's a lot of the same concepts because it's from the same tree. O'Connell and Kubiak, McVay, Shanahan, obviously Clint Kubiak's dad, Gary, was such a great coach for a long time. I knew Darnold and Kubiak would mesh pretty quickly, but I thought it would take more time on offense for the rest of the team, considering the young offensive line and trying to get healthy. All the new receivers except for Smith and Jigba, and then all of them, even Smith and Jigba's new, working with Darnold and Kubiak. Right? You've obviously got the surprise emergence of Torrey Horton, who I liked in college, but coming off the knee injury, I wasn't sure how effective he would be. Or I didn't think their offense would look like the way it does until later in the season, when you get to week 10, 11, 12 and times like that. I'm surprised that the chemistry has been this easy to find and that the offensive line has played relatively well. Is it the best O-line in the league yet? No, they're so young. It's not going to be. But last year in our grading, they were 27th, in PFF grade on the offensive line. And honestly, the second half of the year, down the stretch, it might have been the worst in football. I'd have to look at the splits. This year, right now, the 17th. And you know what? This team, this offense, and this quarterback with an average offensive line and the play caller and Clint Kubiak calling great games, that's good enough. We have a saying around here at PFF, especially on the O-line, creep back to average. If you're bad, get back to average first, and then you'll be great after that. They've gotten back to that, at least so far. I think Zabel and Sundell and Bradford on the inside, they've been good enough. And honestly, for a lot of teams in the NFL right now, Houston, Minnesota with their injuries, the Chargers with their injuries, some other teams, they're not good enough, right? So good enough, it sounds like, it's kind of a backhanded compliment, but good enough on the offensive line is better than a whole lot of teams are doing. I can tell you right here in Cincinnati, they wish they had the 17th rated offensive line, right? So, I think it's just it surprised me how early this would come because I thought it would struggle with maybe chemistry and execution early and then find it later as they really started to gel. They've really found it after week one against Sanford. They found it after 1 week. The last 3 weeks, they just look fantastic.
Well, there's 4 teams that have had a 10-point or better differential swing from 2024 to 2025. So they're scoring. They might be scoring more points, allowing fewer points. The Seahawks are one of those 4. The 4 are the Colts, the Jags, the Patriots, and the Seahawks. The Seahawks have increased their point differential per game by 10.5 points. They basically evenly split about 6 more points on offense and about 5 less points on defense. When you look at this team, what more do you need to see in order to feel like, okay, this is a legitimate, playoff team. This is a legitimate division title team. This is a legitimate NFC contender. What are the things that you'd want to see from them the rest of the way?
I think we've seen a lot of good things so far because, again, you talk about they were so close to being 4-0. And if this team was 4-0, imagine the conversations we'd be having, right? It's just you're one Nick Bosa play away from being 4-0. I think efficiency in the run game is one thing, and the offensive line just continuing to gel and get better. Again, new system, very much different than what Ryan Grubb was doing last year when there was games when they weren't running the football at all. So at least now they're choosing to do it. More efficiency in the run game, I think, for sure. And then I think in general, because they have such a young team at a lot of different spots, just keep getting reps. Honestly, just keep getting reps and keep the chemistry, getting better each week, right? And Sam Darnold getting more comfortable with Cooper Kupp. He's obviously comfortable with Jackson Smith and Jigba, with Torrey Horton as that big play threat, with more Elijah Arroyo in this offense with the speed that he brings. Don't forget, he led all college tight ends in yards per reception last year. He's an explosive playmaker. So, I don't think there's one thing I can point to as, say, the weakness so far, even through a 3-1 record. I think they just got to go out there and keep getting reps together. And I think eventually it is going to be the X factor all year is going to be the offensive line. A, can they stay healthy? And B, look, if they finish the season 17th, I'd go, that's a good year considering how effective they've been so far and where they were last year. If they get even a little bit better than that, creep up towards, say, 10th or 12th, you get a dangerous team on your hands, because I thought that was the X factor on the field, at least the entire way through the offseason, was, can this offensive line keep it together?
When we're talking to Dalton Wasserman of PFF, make sure you check that stuff out. We'll talk about some stuff he's got coming up really soon. Last question I'd ask you, Dalton. When you look at this Tampa Bay versus Seahawks game this weekend, what are you looking for to be deciding factors outside of the obvious health issues that the Bucs are going through? How do the Seahawks win? How do the Bucs win?
So how the Seahawks win, I'll start with their offense. And I mentioned before that Sam Darnold is the highest graded passer in the league between the numbers. Middle of the field coverage going back to last year has been a major, major issue for the Buccaneers. Levante David, I love him. He's possibly a future Hall of Famer. He's slowing down in coverage a little bit. Servassier Dennis has really struggled, right? So that middle of the field where Darnold and Kubiak have been attacking so often, that's the most vulnerable spot of the Buccaneers defense. I expect the Seahawks, they don't have to get out of the foundation of their passing game to have success in this one. So I think that's big for them. And then I think on the other side, on the defensive side for Seattle, when you look at this team, and if Bucky Irving is out for this game, that's really the big one for me. And their O-line, they've been putting it together. They got Tristan Wirfs back last week. But if Bucky Irving is out this week, the Bucs could get really one-dimensional, and I know they obviously don't want to do that. They've had issues up front, and what you don't want to do, especially against the right. I know the injuries aren't supposed to be the story here. You told me not to make it the story, but it really is with the Bucs.
It's a huge story.
The Bucs are 3-1 because they've been battling. They've just been finding ways to battle and win games through the injuries, but exposing the right side of that offensive line with Luke Gedeke still out, with all of Mike Macdonald's looks and blitz packages. And then again, I think the Bucky Irving factor, if he is not in or if he's nowhere near 100% and the Bucs are one-dimensional, Baker Mayfield, look, he's been a gunslinger because he's had to be, but he's tied for the most turnover-worthy plays in the NFL, forced turnovers. The Seahawks have been doing a great job of forcing turnovers, force a couple more in this game, and I think you get a win.
Dalton, you mentioned on the podcast we were just playing a clip from that you were going to do some film work on Sam Darnold. Have you had a chance to do that yet?
Absolutely. Actually, we have a breakdown on the PFF NFL show channel on YouTube. The video actually just came up about 15 minutes before we came on. So it's brand new right now. It's been up for all of like 45 minutes at the time of me saying this. So check it out. It's again about Sam Darnold attacking the middle of the field and some of the things that Clint Kubiak has brought for him and made pretty simple for him in this offense, and just the level of confidence and decisiveness he's played with. So it's been really great stuff we've seen from him so far. Check that out on the PFF NFL show YouTube channel.
Man, I know what I'm listening to when I take Finn for a walk here in about a half an hour. So Dalton, man, amazing stuff. Great to meet you. And thanks for taking the time to come on with us.
Absolutely. Appreciate you. Let's do it again sometime.
All right. Absolutely. That's Dalton Wasserman of PFF Podcast. And make sure you check out him and Trevor Sikkema over there on the PFF channel. Lots of great stuff. And I will just say PFF gets all this, controversy around them and their grades. For me, it has absolutely enhanced my experience as a fan and an analyst. And you can debate the grades. That's fine. But even that's kind of fun to debate grades. I think generally, if you go back and you look at any position and you look at the rankings at the end of the year, who has the best grades, most of it passes the sniff test. There's every once in a while something that's doesn't quite make sense. I think linebacker has been one that's been a little bit off at times. I think safety sometimes has been a little bit off. But by and far, I just find that data to be really useful. And I think the analysis we get from those guys is great. Honestly, as someone who consumes a lot of content about the Seahawks from around the league, I think the conversation that Trevor and Dalton had about the Seahawks Arizona game was as good as anyone anywhere. And I would say probably better, because they see what the Seahawks are doing in a way that I think a lot of folks just don't. And I think part of it's because people don't care about the Seahawks. They're up in the corner. It's Sam Darnold. It's Clint Kubiak. It's not a lot of household names. So I always respect when you've got people that are actually just analyzing football and kind of putting their hands over the logos and are just telling you what's going on. And I think we're getting good analysis from those guys in that regard. So make sure you check it out. I'm dead serious. As soon as I'm done with this show, I'm going to go listen to Dalton's film breakdown on Sam Darnold. I'm sure I will learn something. Hopefully you guys will do the same. This game this weekend, big game this weekend. And there's more than one big game this weekend. The Seahawks are playing on Sunday. The Mariners are playing both days. And so, of course, I got to make sure you guys have the best way and best deal to get on tickets. We're headed towards fall, so I'd love to find some indoor events to attend with my family, which is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and a bunch more. The NFL is officially back, MLB playoffs are around the corner, and the NBA not too far behind. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Those are the best. Red, not quite as good. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you know what? It doesn't really matter if you are a Dua Lipa fan or a Benson Boone guy, or who knows, maybe you're a Tate McRae person, but there are great concerts coming your way. Find them on SeatGeek. And you know, I have a code for you guys. You can use code HawkBlogger10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code HawkBlogger10. Make sure you click on the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks, SeatGeek. Awesome deal. Make sure you click the link, get the app, download it, and automatically will add the code to your account. Get deal on Mariners tickets because you're going to need them. You're going to need a good deal. Get a deal on Seahawks tickets as well over there at SeatGeek. And it's not the only place you can get a deal. This hat I'm wearing right now, as well as, yes, I've got the Nails shirt on. It's amazing. I'm just a huge Naylor fan, I got to say it. But Simply Seattle, we're working with them. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. And if you want, I think, the best Seattle sports gear out there, you want to go to simplyseattle.com, use code HawkBlogger15 for 15% off. And they don't need to be given deals right now because you can, Mariner stuff is just flying off the shelf. Seahawks stuff is not far behind, and I think they've just got the coolest selection of stuff. I got to go to their warehouse the other day, and it was like being a kid in a candy store. So go to simplyseattle.com, get your favorite Seattle sports gear, use code HawkBlogger15 for 15% off. All right. I got a few more things, little tidbit for you guys going into the evening. So first of all, if you don't already know, it's Thursday. Thursday night football is going to be 49ers against Rams. I think the Rams are probably going to just blow them out of the water. Mac Jones is going to be playing. They don't have Ricky Pearsall. They don't have Jawan Jennings. They still don't have George Kittle. They don't have Nick Bosa. It is a pretty beaten down 49ers team. Now, if the 49ers win, that would certainly take a little luster off the Rams. I don't think the Seahawks can really lose in this scenario. Generally, I kind of lean towards the Rams winning being better for Seattle because the Seahawks have 2 games left against the Rams, so they kind of control their own destiny in that regard. And then the 49ers, if they were to win, they'd go to 3-0 in the division. Don't really like that, even though I don't think they're that great of a team. Their schedule sets up really well for them the rest of the year. So I slightly lean towards the Rams, but who knows? I'll just enjoy watching that game and enjoy knowing that one of those teams is going to lose tonight. So that's really good. But the other thing that I was just putting together and wanted to share with you guys was I kind of started referencing it with Dalton there. I've been curious how big of a change we've seen so far for Seattle on both sides of the ball. And a few numbers to help quantify it. So I did already mention that the Seahawks have the 4th highest point differential change year over year so far through 4 games. The Colts have a 12.9 point improvement, meaning that their point differential is essentially 13 points bigger than it was last year in the positive. The Jaguars have a 12.8, so almost the same. The Patriots have a 12.7. So those 3 teams are kind of in their own tier of, almost 13-point swings in their point differential compared to last year. I think it's also worth knowing those are 3 teams that were not very good, especially the Jags and the Patriots. The Colts were, I think, like an 8-win, 9-win team, something like that. So they were not super bad. So that's a pretty impressive jump. The Seahawks are the only other team with a double-digit swing in their point differential. So now they have a 10.5 point improvement from last year, and that was a 10-win team. So you take a 10-win team and you add a 10.5 point differential. Keep in mind the Seahawks were one of only 2 teams in the NFC West last year with a positive point differential. The other was the Arizona Cardinals, if you can believe it. So the Rams won the division with a negative point differential. That is true. So after the Seahawks, it drops all the way down to 6 points for the Panthers. So the Rams are actually at 6 points, 5.8 points. So you've got some teams in the 49ers who are a 6-win team last year have only had a 3.9 point improvement this year, even though they're 3-1. I think in a lot of ways, they're a similar team to the team that they were last year. When you get down a little bit deeper into those changes, the Seahawks offense has gone up 5.7 points. So to be specific there, the Seahawks were averaging 22.9 points last year. It's up to 27.8 this year. Now that includes special teams touchdowns, so it's not all offense, but most of it is. When you look at the defense is holding teams to 4.8 points less than they did a year ago. So it's not just an offensive story, it's a defensive story as well. The Seahawks were allowing 21.6 points last year. They're allowing 16.8 so far this year. And unfortunately, in that Thursday night game, I think that could have been even lower if some of those weird things hadn't happened, or in the first game, if Reek Woolen had made the play toward the end of the game. But in any event, that's a pretty big improvement. But that's not the only place that they've made these improvements. They have also made changes in terms of yards per play. So this is just an efficiency thing. And if you look at the teams in the NFL that have made the biggest change in yards per play differential, so that's, again, just to be clear, you have your offensive yards per play. Let's say you average 5 yards a play and you allow 5 yards a play, then your differential would be 0, right? If you have 6 yards a play on offense and 4 yards a play on defense, your differential would be 2. Most people don't have a 2 yards per play differential. That would be pretty big. But in any event, the Rams are number 1 in the NFL this year in their year-over-year change in yards per play differential. They have gained almost 2 yards in their differential, 1.8. I'll go down and break that down a little bit more about where that's coming from, whether it's defense or offense, in a second, but that's pretty big. The second is the Cleveland Browns at 1.1. They're tied with the Colts, who are also a 1.1 improvement. And again, 1 yard differential between offense and defense and what you're allowing is a really big deal. I'll go back and look at who has the biggest differentials on those in a second. But in any event, these are big changes. The Seahawks are 4th. They have a 1 yard differential. They're tied with the Chargers with that kind of change year over year. So 4th in point differential change, 4th in yards per play differential. And if I look at where that's coming from for the Seahawks, on offense, they're just gaining 0.2 yards per play different than they did a year ago. Defensively, they're allowing 0.8 yards per play less. That's a big change. So that's interesting to me. And then if I look at yards per play differential, the Rams, so the Seahawks last year had a 0.2 yards per play differential. They were positive. They had a slightly positive yards differential. This year, they're at 1.2. So that is a pretty good number. In fact, as I look through, I'm going to see where it ranks. Well, let me make sure I'm looking at the right thing before I say that. Yeah, that should be right. Okay. So, I believe the only team, am I seeing anybody that has a larger one? The Packers are at 1.1. The Colts are at 1.1. Chargers are at 1.1. if I'm reading this right, and I think I am, the Seahawks have the largest yards per play differential in the NFL this year. Number one. There's reason a lot of these statistically based power rankings have the Seahawks as the best team in football because a lot of the numbers are pointing in that direction. By the way, yards per play is one of the metrics that Vegas has used historically more than almost any other to kind of predict matchups. So it is a predictive number in a lot of cases. The Bucs, by the way, who they're facing this weekend, have a 0.6 yards per play positive differential. That is slightly worse. They were 0.7 last year. The Rams, I mentioned that they'd had a jump as well this year. But the interesting thing is, okay, there we go. I was wrong. I did miss it. I was looking for them. They have a 1.5 yards per play differential. So they are number one. The Seahawks are number two in that regard. So, I like having a really good team in the division. I think it makes for exciting football, and you will know if you when you get to the end of the season, you'll have a pretty good idea where you stand relative to the rest of the conference and maybe the rest of the NFL. Where did the Rams make the biggest change? Let's see. So I'm going to look real quick. So biggest defensive change. They've had a -1 yards per play on defense change. That is a huge, huge change for them. Offensively, they're already pretty good last year, and they have a 0.8 yards per play improvement. So they've had essentially, they've had almost a, yard per play on both sides of the ball. So the Rams are a lot better than they were last year, as are the Seahawks. So I think, just some numbers. They're not the end all be all, but I think they tell a little bit of a story of what we've seen so far. And this game against the Bucs, this is a tough matchup. I don't care how many people they have injured. This is as long as Baker Mayfield steps on that field, it's going to be a dogfight. Let's see. We've got a super chat here from Ali Spy. Says, could Emmanwori rotate some to take some snaps at linebacker against 11 personnel? Trying to parse Mike a bit. Felt like he wanted to say more. So Ali Spy is referring to the press conference yesterday where I asked Mike Macdonald about can Nick Emmanwori play against 11 personnel, and he was pretty brief. My interpretation of him being brief was they don't want to give away a lot about how they plan to use Nick Emmanwori. Can he play linebacker? Potentially, but I think people overstress the position in that regard. Emmanwori is going to be a player that plays near the line of scrimmage and plays in the middle of the field. He's not going to be a boundary corner. He's not going to probably play much deep safety. He's going to play near the line of scrimmage. Now, whether that has linebacker responsibilities versus safety responsibilities versus corner responsibilities, that's a real nuance that I don't think is that useful to get into. The reality is, I don't think that they are going to pull another. I mean, they could pull Tyrese Knight or Drake Thomas off the field instead of one of their corners, but that hasn't been how they've deployed that personnel package, at least through training camp. When they were in their big nickel, it was Emmanwori playing the nickel position and two corners playing boundary corner and the normal linebacker situation happening alongside it. So it's a fair question. It's something to watch for. That is not my expectation heading into it. I know there's skeptics about whether or not Emmanwori can hold up against an 11 personnel grouping. We're going to find out. And I have a feeling Mike Macdonald knows what he's doing there. I'd also just say, I don't know that Nick Emmanwori is going to be asked to do a lot of man coverage against a receiver. Not that it's out of the question that he could hold up in that regard, but the Seahawks don't play a lot of man coverage at this point. They play a lot of zone. And Nick Emmanwori, I think, from when I looked at him in college, I thought he was a really excellent zone player, especially his speed and length allows him to kind of lull quarterbacks into a false sense of security. They try to throw it over him, and he gets deep, he gets depth really quickly, and he is long and can jump. I saw him pick off a number of passes by being like getting underneath a throw that a quarterback thought he could get over Nicky Emmanwori, but wasn't able to. So I think that's going to be part of how he's used. I think he's also going to be blitzed. I think that he's a guy that showed some real promise as a blitzer, both in training camp and in preseason. And I don't think it's an accident that Mike Macdonald sent him on a blitz on like his third snap or something like that. They're excited about what he can do. And by the way, he made a tackle for a loss on that blitz. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mike Macdonald has in mind for Nicky Emmanwori and what Nicky Emmanwori has to offer. We just don't know yet. Like, we've now seen Gray Zabel for 4 games. We've seen Elijah Arroyo for 4 games. We've seen Torrey Horton for 4 games. We don't know. I think we have high hopes, but we don't know, and we get to find that out on Sunday. All right. Couple more things, and then we'll get on with the day. Folks, if you have not already downloaded the Sleeper app, now is a great time to do it. Awesome opportunity to get a $100 match. Use code HAWKS, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Great place to get your real-time stats, to track your fantasy football, to make picks, all sorts of things up there on the Sleeper app. Use code HAWKS to get your $100 match on your first $100 deposit. Okay. There was one other thing. Let's see if we're going to play this. I think, why not? Why not? This came out today. I have to remember where exactly. I'm going to have to search around a little bit in the timeline of it. But this was ESPN today. Okay, this is ESPN today talking about Sam Darnold. And let me play this for you guys. I think they're talking about his ability, his accuracy this year, which is something that for a lot of years was the knock on Sam Darnold.
Longest in the NFL. We'll get back to that in a second. But this is the 10 in the NFL. Sam Darnold. Some really interesting numbers when I dug into them. Let's start with the completion percentage, top 10 in the NFL. Why that's even more impressive, look at the average pass distance, guys. More than 8 yards downfield on average. That's 5th longest in the NFL. We'll get back to that in a second. But this is the number that really stuck out to me. Sam Darnold has thrown 100 passes so far this season. Only 6 of them have been overthrown or underthrown. That is the fewest among starters to start every one of their team games. And guys, just for comparison's sake, Justin Herbert has 25 off-target throws. Not a criticism of Herbert, more just impressive what Darnold has done so far. Let's get back to that.
So we got to pause there. I want to make sure you guys heard that because it's crazy. Sam Darnold has only 6 off-target throws. Only 6 off-target throws all season. Justin Herbert, as a comparison, has 25. So the amount of accuracy that Sam Darnold has is remarkable. And the fact that he's doing that with an average depth of target of 8.3 is crazy. Now, he's going to now go on to talk about those deep throws.
So well last year with the Vikings, led the NFL in completions 20 yards downfield. You're doing the same thing this season. You got 10, tied with Matthew Stafford for the most in the NFL. Look at this completion percentage for Darnold, 71%, 20-plus yards downfield. League average is 38%.
Okay, those are crazy, crazy, crazy numbers. On passes 20-plus yards down the field, Sam Darnold has a 71% completion percentage. The league average is 38%. Like, that is nuts. Probably not sustainable. Like that's how crazy it is. And worth noting, like, there's probably a little regression that'll happen there. You're not going to be completing 71% of your passes 20 plus yards downfield. That's kind of wild. And I think I've got one more clip I've got to play here. I think this is Dan Orlovsky at some point.
We going cap or no cap on all that?
It's no cap.
Let's
It's
go,
no cap.
Cap.
Also,
Yeah.
me and Mina will include you into the Sam Darnold club.
I love
Okay, Orlovsky, come on. He and Mina will include this ESPN analyst into the Sam Darnold club. Well, I'll take it. I'm glad that they're on the Sam Darnold club on Sam Darnold Island, as it's felt like at times. But we have elephant memories in Seahawks fan base. We remember what the takes were about Sam Darnold versus Geno Smith in the offseason. So happy to have you, but let's also own that you're not like the founding members of said club. You were potentially allowed in by others. We're happy to have more people join the club, but don't act like you're founders, please. All right. By the way, there's more stuff on that clip from ESPN. Dan Orlovsky talks a lot about Sam Darnold's feet, not in a Rex Ryan kind of way, but in a football kind of way. And one of the things that's really fascinating that is what came up for him is he talks about how calm and steady his feet are and how he's letting his feet kind of lead him. Well, two things on that. One, they have the shirts, they have the motto, listen to your feet, in the quarterback room for the Seahawks. So that's interesting. And at least they're demonstrating what they're preaching on the field. The other thing is the number one thing that had me concerned about Sam Darnold in that first OTA practice, where Mike Salk infamously asked Mike Macdonald afterwards whether there was a chance that there could be quarterback controversy, was Sam Darnold had really overactive, frantic feet. And he looked very uncomfortable. He looked panicked. And his feet were the main reason. The comparison between that practice and what we're seeing now, I wish more of you could have been there for that and seen how different his lower half is now versus then. It is night and day. And I think you've got to give Andrew Janocko, Clint Kubiak, Sam Darnold, Jordan Palmer, like everybody who's been involved in working with Sam Darnold, a ton of credit on helping him to become the more fundamentally sound player that he is at the moment. And it bodes well. I mean, I think when you have a quarterback that's making those kinds of decisions and looks that comfortable in the pocket, usually good things come from that. So good stuff there. I will again plug the Dalton Wasserman film breakdown. I see it already on my YouTube playlist. Sam Darnold is playing elite football for the Seattle Seahawks is the one there. So we'll take that and take a listen to that. Later today, I will head into the VMAC for a Sam Darnold press conference, talk to some other players. I've already got some locker room stuff up on patreon.com/hawkblogger, as well as all the places you get our podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. A lot of fun conversations yesterday about, I asked Seahawks players if one of your teammates had given you the nickname Big Dumper, like the Mariners' Cal Raleigh, how would you have felt about that? There's some funny responses from Gray Zabel and Abe Lucas and Drew Lock and Jake Bobo. So check that out. A lot of laughs and good stuff, and also some conversation about football. I even got a compliment on my mustache from Gray Zabel and from Robbie Oots, but I can't play the Robbie Oots stuff because he's injured and we're not allowed to talk to injured players. But in any event, check that out. Patreon.com/hawkblogger gets you all that, ad-free audio, access to the Discord channel, and verified over at hbtix.com. So all that good stuff. I should let you guys know there is a open spot on the Ring of Honor. It is very rare for there to be an open spot over on patreon.com/hawkblogger for the Ring of Honor. If you get it, you will get an invite to our steak dinner that will happen again next year. But you also get access to a private channel in the Discord only for our elite members. And it's a really cool crew. And most people that are Ring of Honor don't leave because it's a really good experience. You get to meet a lot of really cool folks. This year at the Ring of Honor dinner, we had Stacey Ross. Michael Bumpus was going to be there, couldn't make it, but we had Rob Staten. other members from the HP crew. So get it while you can. There's only 12 spaces, and one of them is available. It's a rare occurrence. So patreon.com/hawkblogger if you want it. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I will be back with you tomorrow with Dave Bowling and Mike Sando. Those two are always fun. So we'll see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. Until then, have a great day. I'm Brian M. Hauser, and this has been your latest Hawk Blogger Morning.